بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. A couple of nights ago we discussed one of the stories pertaining to Nabi Adam alayhi salam, and I tried to establish when describing the story that sometimes there are indicators which tell us this did not happen in the physical realm. It's impossible for it to have happened in the physical realm. If it's possible, rationally possible, for an event given in the Quran to happen, rationally possible, for it to happen in the physical realm, we have to say it's in the physical realm. It's only when the indicators demonstrate that it's impossible for it to have happened in the physical realm, we go deeper and say it's not in the physical realm, we look into the metaphysical. Whenever there's mention of angels in the stories of the prophets, usually it's not happening in the physical realm. So when Nabi Ibrahim saw the 4 guests before they went to the tribe of Lut, alayhim as-salam, they were angels, those 4. So he was having a vision. And then in the beginning, he even brought some food because he thought they were physical. But he saw they're not consuming from it. Here, that was a vision of Ibrahim. He saw the angels, but not with the physical eye. Lady Maryam alayhi salam, فَتَمَثَّلَ لَهَا بَشَرًا سَوِيًّا. She saw a well-proportioned human being. If me and you were with her, we wouldn't have seen that human being, because it wasn't a physical one to be seen with the physical eye. That too, the ahadith say that was an angel which appeared before her, laha. It was in unity with her, in the same way dreams are in unity with me. And so the person beside me isn't seeing what I'm seeing. And there are many other stories. The story of Adam, this particular story, when you look at the ahadith, the description it gives in relation to the heaven that they were in, where all the fruits were available on the trees, it wasn't a physical reality. And then what is Iblis doing in this heaven? If it was, heaven in the physical realm and of the good type, and what is Iblis doing there? And then things in the physical realm, they decompose. Heaven is eternal. And many other indicators. There's the imperative, ihbitu, get down from here. It's not a physical heaven that you're getting down from. And many other parameters and indicators, and the likes of Allama Tabatabai, Ayatollah Jawadi Amin and others have said that this was heaven of a metaphysical nature. But we have to see which heaven, in which arc of existence, and we've discussed that. The story of Nabi Dawood too, we discussed, and that too, there were 2 groups of angels that appeared before him. They weren't people in the physical form. And then you see that halfway through, they leave. Because when there's 2 sides of 2 adversaries in the court, he gives his say, one party gives their say, Nabi Dawood gave the ruling, then there's no mention, it all finished. They all disappeared. Then Dawood realized that this was something else. and other indicators in this story, making it this vision that he had was something on a par with the metaphysical realm and not in the physical. This too, Allama Tabatabai, Ayatollah Jawadi Amili and others, they have said that this didn't happen in the physical realm. And so when you quickly say he did tarka awla, yes, that's very premature. But there are some stories, no. It happened in the physical realm, and most of the stories are like this. But the thing is, some interpreters, they don't, when you look at the words of the Quran, they say, well, it can't be this. They change it a bit. They're changing Allah's words. And they come up with their own interpretation. That interpretation is not on a par with what the Quran is saying. I'm going to give the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And if you have your mobiles with you, it may be worth going through the verses as I go through to try and digest it better. It's in chapter 38, verse 30 onwards. We'll go through it verse by verse in a minute. So you see, sometimes in the Quran, the word of Allah, say, well, it can't mean this. So they alter it a bit. And then sometimes they can't understand what the Quran is saying. They refer to the ahadith and they quickly grasp onto the hadith, and this is what the Quranic story is all about. That hadith may not be valid. It may not be authentic. You may find one hadith, for example, but with one hadith you can't make history. You can't affirm it happened with one hadith. It's not like fiqh. With one hadith, it's good to do that action. But with one story, a hadith mentioning one story, you don't find certainty in relation to the story. Especially with the ahadith in relation to the story of Sulaiman, there are so many different ahadith mentioning different things. We have to use the Quran as the main base. And if the hadith is not on a par with the word of Allah, we discard the hadith. We're not scared of that. The hadith, there may be many problems with the hadith. It's a science in itself. There are so many parameters one has to take in mind. Just finding one authentic hadith doesn't make history. You certainly don't have certainty in relation to its truth and reality with just one chain of narration. It's not how it works. You have to hear it many times, different sources, and say, this happened. Not with one chain. Now, with the story of Sulaiman, it's of this type. It happened in the physical realm. But people not understanding the word of God, they've come up with incredible interpretations. Then I've looked through those which I had access to. All the English translations and all the Farsi translations, including the well-known Farsi translations that we have today. Translations which were done by teams of scholars. I couldn't find one accurate translation of this verse. And where did I get it from? Something Ibn Arabi said. Ibn Arabi mentioned it. He didn't go into too much detail, but in 2 lines he mentioned something. It makes you think, good grief, what have we been told? Why have we only took this side of the story? And so we'll go through one or two stories in relation to Sulaiman alayhi salam, and let's see where it gets us. Chapter 38, verse 30. وَوَهَبْنَا لِدَاوُودَ سُلَيْمَانَ نِعْمَ الْعَبْدُ إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. That we gifted for Dawood Sulaiman. So Sulaiman is Allah's gift to Dawood. He's a hibatullah. There were some prophets who were specifically I mean, all prophets are Allah's gift, and in every human being, from one angle you can say is Allah's gift, but the term specifically has been assigned to only a few prophets, such as one of the sons of Adam, Sheeth alayhi salam, Yahya alayhi salam, and Sulaiman, and there may be one or two, I can't remember now. So we gifted for Dawood, what did we give? We gifted Sulaiman. Ni'mal abd, and what a good abd he was. Innahu awwab. So look, here we see that before we start the story, Sulaiman is being praised here. At the end of the story, Sulaiman is being praised again. In between, there are two stories, and both these two stories, we say, Tarka Ola, he did a mistake, he missed this, he missed that, he did wrong. This goes against the context of the Quran. Allah is giving all these praises, very unique praises, before the stories, after the stories, and then we come and give a very wrong, erroneous interpretation of the story. Something's wrong here. It means we haven't understood what the story is about. The stories of the Quran, it's very deep, very multi-layered. Awwab, terms like Tawbah or Inaba and Awwab, which comes from the root word Iyab, these all have different meanings. The way the English translations of Awwab, go and see how they've translated it. They say, for example, repentant. That's Tawbah. Or penitent. They've done something wrong, and then now they want to amend their ways. But they've done something wrong. This is neither Inabe nor Awwab. It can't apply to these two. It can apply to Tawbah. Tawbah, there are two sides to it. But with Awwab is someone who is constantly, in the phrase wa inna ilayhi raji'un, is constantly returning to Allah, continuously attentive to Allah. This is Sulaiman. Awwab, it's a hyperbolic paradigm, a paradigm of hyperbole, with emphasis. That he's constantly, moment to moment, attentive to Allah. There's nothing but Allah in his heart. It makes you think, then you have traditions, hadith. The last prophet who will enter heaven is Sulaiman. Allahu Akbar. Where did you get that from? It's a hadith. What kind of hadith? It's going against the Quran. What are you talking about? The Shias shouldn't feel complacent with their ahadith. Other denominations, it's much worse. But the threat exists. And the Hawza, for many centuries, it's more hadith-based than Quran-based. And that's putting it very politely. So, Awwab, yes, you're constantly. Now, Inaba, too. When you look at the root word, you haven't done anything wrong with Inaba. Nothing has happened. But after something happens, and then the term Inaba comes to play, you feel more inclined towards Allah at a stronger pace and route. Not that you go back, you've done something wrong, and then you go, you're always going towards Allah, then even more so. These two terms have in mind because we see it a lot. But there's no Tawbah here. And this is in the physical realm now. So it's important, because if Tawbah was mentioned in the physical realm, yes, talk of Tarka, all of these kind of things, we may have been forced into that. But here there's no talk of Tawbah. Tawbah in the metaphysical realms has another meaning. There's no problem there. It says that we saw no azm in Adam, it was to do with the metaphysical realm. Yes, there was no azm. There was he committed something which he was told not to do. If it says Adam alayhi salam rebelled, it was in the metaphysical realm. These things all have meaning, and we discussed all those. But now this is in the physical realm. You speak of Tawbah, there's going to be problems now. And you don't see Tawbah, you see Awwab and Inaba. So Allah is giving praises here. At the end of the two stories, He's giving praises. In the middle, we have two stories. And then how are we going to interpret it? This is a severe problem we have. And, the stories of the Quran that we give to our children too, I'm not sure how we're teaching them the stories of the Quran. But it's important the way we do it, because if it becomes inculcated in them in the wrong way, you try to reverse that, it's not going to be easy. Okay, now in verse 31, we start. إِذْ, recall. أُرِدَ عَلَيْهِ, that displayed or presented before him, were the as-safinatul jiyad, which they're horses of those horses which are prancing or racing, or of a particular type which are used in the battlefields more. It's a particular form. And these horses were presented or displayed or exhibited before Sulaiman alayhi salam bil ashi. So إِذْ أُرِدَ عَلَيْهِ بِالْعَشِيِّ الصَّافِنَاتُ الْجِيَادِ. Bil ashi is giving the time frame here. It's late afternoon and slowly entering sunset. That's the period that is referred to. So it's near the sunset time. فَقَالَ, and now this is the ultimate verse which has to be opened up. And I'll try to do that tonight. Sulaiman said, Inni, verily, ahbabtu hubbal khayri and dhikri rabbi hatta tawarat bil hijab. Now, I don't want to give you the final translation which I'm trying to put forward. But when you look at the translations of the Holy Quran, it says, verily, I prefer. Some say niceties with worldly in brackets. I prefer the niceties of the dunya to remembering Allah. Some say, I prefer the horses to remembering Allah. Where are they getting all this from? What kind of preference is this? Where did they get the word prefer from? You see the problems here? And there are many others. I don't know all of them off by heart. But here there are many mistranslations. And I'll give you, but I have to go step by step before I don't want to spoil the story right in the beginning. So let's go with the standard translations that exist. I prefer the horses to remembering Allah, over remembering Allah. Na'udhu billah, it's incredible this. Hatta, until tawarat bil hijab, until they disappeared or vanished into the veil of darkness. Nighttime came. Sulaiman alayhi salam, according to certain translators, say he likes the horses, he prefers the horses to remembering Allah. Then the horses vanished in the darkness that was prevailing then. Some say hatta tawarat, the pronoun hiya, which is concealed in tawarat, is referring to the sun. So until the sun disappeared, meaning until the sun set. But there's no talk of sun in the context of these verses. Why would they say it goes back to sun? In the context, you have horses. And he's saying, I prefer them to remembering Allah until the horses went. And then he said, Rudduha. Return them. Okay, return what? Those who say sun says return the sun. Like Raddu Shams of Amirul Mu'mineen. It's also recorded in relation to the Prophet Yusha, Joshua. So all of a sudden the story has gone into, until the sun set, the pronoun in Tawarat here is referring to the sun, and Rudduha is return the sun. So that, why should the sun return? Then you see the interpreter saying, well, he missed his salat. Why did he miss his salat? Well, he loves the horses. I mean, look. No, I mean, if there's a problem, please, yeah, it's okay, you can speak out and we can discuss it, but it's a serious problem, this. I hope it's not only me. I want to really transfer this, that it's more than a problem. You missed your salat? Now, where did salat come into this? The context, there's no talk of salat. The zahir, the prima facie meaning here, where did salat come from it? Then the interpreters go to ahadith, most of which are Israeliyat, where Sulaiman missed his salat. Now, did he miss the fadila time, the grace period of salat? Was it the wajib salat, na'udhu billah? Was it the nafila he missed? Which kind of salat was? There's no mention. But where did salat come from? Where did the sun come from? Why are these used? When the zahir of the context, until the horses vanished. Then you said, return them to me. Now here, there's a lot more to say, but I'm trying to go step by step. So until either the sun vanished in the veil of darkness, istitarul qurs, where the disk of the sun is not visible on that horizon, or is it the horses? This hiya pronoun, is it referring to safinat? Okay, hiya is singular, but it's okay with broken plurals. You've done this in sarf and nah. There's no problem. Or is it shams? That's one area which has to be tried to be opened up. Then return them to me. Is it the sun? Or is it the horses, which he loves so much apparently? Now, when you want to give an interpretation, you have to make sure it's not interpreted in a manner which goes against ismat and the station of the prophets. Because this now is happening in the physical realm. The slightest error here is very problematic. It can't be accepted. Okay, so then we go in the ahadith. Some say that, yes, he loved the horses a lot. He loved the horses. Some say that, yes, and he loved them so much that he preferred them to remembering Allah. Now, remembering Allah, but not, he didn't say salat, but then sunset arose. This caused side effects, spiritual side effects, because he missed some salat of some kind. In the traditions it says. He asked the sun to return because he missed the salat and because of preferring the horses. And then as a compensation, and we'll come to that verse in chapter 33, فَتَفِغَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوغِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. Here in certain ahadith says, one meaning they say is that of cutting. So he cut the shins and necks of those horses. Why would Sulaiman cut and kill those horses? They were horses for jihad. He was the governor. He was the leader. Why would he do that? It's not befitting for a ma'soom just to kill an animal for no reason. Say, well, he missed his salat for that. He's compensating. You see? That's not acceptable. Allama Tabatawi doesn't accept this aspect of it. Although Allama Tabatawi does say this idea of the sun had vanished. He refers it back to the sun. And maybe even he prefers the horses to remembrance of Allah. Maybe. When I read it, that may be extrapolated from Allama Tabatawi. Although one has to note, Al-Mizan, the 20 volumes, was written in very difficult circumstances. He was pushed a lot by the publishers. He had to write one volume in a certain time frame, every volume. He was pushed a lot. It wasn't that he was totally free and have the best of access to time, facilities, and so on and so forth. But that's no excuse at the end of the day. But he wrote it, but even he, when he's giving the standard interpretation, says the cutting of the shins and the necks of the horses, that I can't accept. Because it's not befitting on the station of a prophet to do such a thing. So these traditions, when it goes against the station of prophet, they have to be discarded. We can't accept them. And they have no bearing with the context of the Quran either. So according to the hadith, فَدَّعُوهُ, just discard them. And so with most theologians who take this idea of him, Sulaiman alayhi salam, preferring the horses to the dhikr Rabbi, they say there was a tarka awla here. They mention it's a tarka awla. But the point is, tarka awla here is nothing. There's no trace of it when you look at the context of the Quran before and after the story. Tarka awla has no meaning here. Okay. And also, it's an irfani point. But one has to bear in mind that, and sometimes this happens that, first of all, unfortunately, even within, you may hear that sometimes they say prophets have made a slip. Even in relation to their legislative powers, they made an error. You may have heard some scholars say that. Well, that's what the Christians say. But we don't believe that. Someone who is ma'soom, it's impossible because they're in the presence of Allah. Me and you are not in the presence of, we are, but we're not aware. We don't have irfan, awareness that we're in the presence of Allah. Allah for us is a concept. So we make an error, but don't attribute errors to people who see Allah moment to moment. They're in their presence. It's like, for example, if I describe a lion, the concept of a lion, everyone is just sitting there. But if we all see a lion and be in the presence of a lion, everyone is going to run away. There's a difference here. Someone who really is huduri, in the presence of Allah, they don't make errors. That's one thing. So these people who say that, it's because of a lack of their irfan. Secondly, then some scholars say, and we even have them amongst ourselves, that, okay, in legislative powers, they don't make an error, but maybe in non-legislative related things, nothing to do with guidance. When they were, boiling an egg or eating or with the family or with children, they may have made an error there. And the answer is, of course not. What's the difference? If you're in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't make a difference whether you're guiding or not guiding. You're not going to err. That's the second point, yes. But the third point is this, that whatever, and I don't want to expand on this here, I've expanded elsewhere before, that whatever the any prophet does, it's wajib, whatever they do. It's, providentially wajib upon them. This is beyond legislative wajib. It's providentially wajib. Everything they did, it was wajib for them to do. So look, let's make this clear before people who are not qualified saying anything they want. Then we go back to this, the key verse, which was verse number 32. فَقَالَ إِنِّي, verily I, أَحْبَبْتُ حُبَّ الْخَيْرِ عَنْ ذِكْرِ رَبِّي. Let's first focus on the preposition an. How is that translated? So I haven't seen anyone translate this. And then only about 10 days ago, I was in a village in the north of Iran, and there was a well-known scholar there, and he said to me, they brought and gifted me with this Quran. Someone gifted it to him. And then, is it good? So usually I look at different verses to see if a translation is good or not, although one shouldn't rush into a judgment. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ, alhamdulillah, they translated in chapter 2 verse 2 as that book, which is correct, whereas most translations say this book. We tell them, why do you say this book? It's written that book. They say, well, it means this book. We say, well, no, actually it doesn't. If it was only the physical realm of existence, okay. But there are other realms of existence. Maybe it's referring to another reality. And another is this verse. And then this Quran translated this verse spot on. And this was only 10 days ago. I mean, before Ibn Arabi, I was familiar with many of his interpretations of the surahs of the Quran. But I would never see a correct translation. But then this one was a good translation. It was English too. It was based on an Urdu translation of this scholar. And based on the Urdu, this team called Kanzul Iman translated it into English. It has many errors elsewhere. I mean, no translation is perfect. But this verse, it was spot on. So I don't know who the translator is, but the Urdu translator from which this was translated from was called Imam Ahmad something Khan. Ahmad Raza Khan. I have no idea who he is. And he died in 1921, according to the foreword which I read of that translation. And but I was surprised. That's the only, and this was very recent, only 10 days ago, accidentally. I had planned to mention this story, and then all of a sudden, 10 days ago, it made me very excited when I saw this translation. So I'll give what that translation is, but nowhere else, particularly in the Farsi translations. Anyway, let's focus on an, ain, noon. It's a preposition. This preposition has to, when you look at this preposition, you see that they've translated it with another preposition, Allah. Now this is Allah's word. Allah is saying, an dhikr Rabbi. And why are you translating it as Allah dhikr Rabbi? We have a lot of this in the Quran. That's why I'm not very favorable towards translations, because we have a lot of it, every page. Allah is saying, an dhikr Rabbi. You're translating as Allah. And then you say, ahbabtu Allah. Sulaiman is saying, I prefer the horses over dhikr Rabbi. It's wrong. Where did Allah come into this? And then we have a problem. And the problem goes back to the seminary schools. Alhamdulillah, Ayatollah Jawadi is saying this. I don't have the audacity to say it. See, he says the likes of Ibn Hisham in Mughni, they can't give a tafsir of the Holy Quran. Most of the books of Arabic grammar that we're studying in the Shia seminaries, they're books by Sunni scholars. And then there's almost a third of the verse of the Holy Quran you see in Mughni, Al-Mughni al-Labib. A third of the verses. But you see, the verse comes, the verse says an, then he says an means Allah. Or this means that. It's saying an. It's saying min. What right do you have to then change the meaning? This can't be acceptable. Whatever you say, it can't be acceptable. Ayatollah Jawadi only is saying this. He's saying the likes of Ibn Hisham, you can't base your tafsir on the likes of him. Now you look at Ibn Hisham in the first volume out of 8 volumes in Mughni al-Labib. When he speaks of an, he says there are 6 meanings. An means an. It also means Allah. It means min. It means lam. And 1 or 2 others. One by one. Look, that's a mockery of the Quran. Although Ibn Hisham was a very industrious scholar. He put a lot. I don't want to defame or disrespect him. But his idea, his worldview is a mockery. We can't accept it. It's wrong. And this is governing the seminary schools today, even in Qom. Just the likes of Ayatollah Jawadi, it's not a miracle, but something Allah has given him to has really granted this blessing. And after him, when he passes away, Allah will grant more. It's never the end of the story. We shouldn't get overexcited. Oh, there's never going to be someone like him. No, there'll be plenty like him, and even better as time goes. Allah will always keep on giving. Allah's not miserly. He keeps on giving. And I'm not sure who it was. I can't attribute it. But it said the Quran requires a tafsir every year. New meanings come out every year after Laylatul Qadr. These things are, it never ends. So, why say Allah when it's saying an dhikr Rabbi? So that's the first problem. We have to see what an means, the preposition an. But another problem is that he's saying, I love, ahbabtu, it means love. Why do you say prefer? They say, we have this unfortunately, in syntax, that when the preposition changes, the meaning of the original word changes. Ahbabtu means I love. But an has been changed to Allah, it becomes I prefer over. It's called the art of tazmeen. Yes, these things, it's not acceptable. So, it says, I love, then it says, hubb al-khair. Now, khair means good, okay? And one application of that good are the horses. But it's good. The word is good here. It applies to every good thing. But here, horses is used because it's one application, and the application is taken from the context. Now, that's not a very severe penalty in translation, but it's not a very loyal translation. But let's use horses for now, even though khair, if you use the universal meaning of good, it's better. But I love the horses. Okay, and some of the better translations have this. I love the horses. And dhikr Rabbi, they say, an means lam, le dhikr Rabbi, because that's the objective. I love the horses to get close to Allah, to remember Allah. But here too, the same problem, it's an, not lam. And some translate it as min. And that's also wrong for reasons I'll come to it when I explain an. But even before we explain the preposition an, there's another problem. Look, we have to be loyal to the text. I love the love of horses. And this no one had mentioned, and this was the point Ibn Arabi was mentioning. It's not, he doesn't love the horses. He loves the love of the horses. أحببت حب الخير. Then someone may come and say, well, no, حب الخير is an absolute object. مفعول مطلق. I mean, now you're all seminary students, so it's easy to explain. Now this is مفعول مطلق. حب الخير. You say, what's a مفعول مطلق? You know, it's that which it's depicting the number or the manner of the verb أحببت. It's like an adverbial qualification whereby the verb is quantitatively عددا or qualitatively نوعا, say مفعول مطلق نوعي عددي, is described or depicted. Allahu Akbar, really? So this is مفعول مطلق, very good. But one question remains. What on earth is the object then? What does he like then? If he likes X in the manner of liking horses, what is X? And so this can't be the case. It's very clear, inshallah. There's no maf'ulun bih. What does he like then? If there's only maf'ulun mutlaq, what is the maf'ulun bih? So it can't be maf'ulun mutlaq. It can't be an absolute object. So now the story, the translation is this. Verily I love the love of horses. Ibn Arabi says, show me where the love of horses are. Where is it? Where is it situated? You have to say inside you. It's not outside you. This is a state of you. You love the love of horses. Okay, so that's one thing which no one translates except this Imam Ahmad Raza Khan. And may Allah enlighten his soul. He's passed away just over 100 years ago. I have no idea who he is though, but at least after all this time, his translation comes and we're mentioning it here. So I love the love of horses. Okay. And dhikr Rabbi. So we've said it's not Allah. It's not le dhikr Rabbi. It's not min dhikr Rabbi. It's an dhikr Rabbi. Now this an, what does it mean? This and Mughni in Mughni al-Labid too, it mentions it. It says every preposition has a main meaning, but it has subsidiary meanings. Whereas what he should say is every preposition has one meaning. But that one meaning may have applications. But those applications have to be under the umbrella of that one meaning, not another meaning, mutually exclusive to that. Yeah, I'm sorry, I may be going over time, just 1 or 2 nights, and inshallah. It's a pity not to finish it right now. So what does it mean? They say an is ane mujawazat. It's a transition, crossing, transitional an. Okay, what does that mean though? Can you explain the nature of this transition? They say we'll give you a few examples. Katabtu al-khututa an hibr, an al-hibr. That I'm writing the lines, I'm writing them. An al-hibr, from ink. From is loosely translated, it's something else, but I don't want to give it away right now. From ink. Here, this would have been min al-hibr, from ink. But anil hibr, if you want to translate it correctly, it would be out of ink. You're writing lines. If someone says, what's the source of these lines? Where did you get it from? You say from ink. You use the preposition min al-hibr. Min shows what the source was. Anything after that, it's silent. But when you say, I'm writing the lines anil hibr, you're saying the source was ink. And moment to moment, the ink is still making that transition. And as you're writing, it's still coming out of the ink. So an is out of. Or for example, ramaytu, I throw or fire. As-sahma, an arrow. Anil qaws, from the bow. If you say minal qaws, you say, where did this firing come from? You say it came from this. That's the source, the bow. But when you say anil qaws, as the bow is making the projection, it's all coming out of the energy of the bow. So moment to moment, the moving of that, it's coming out of the bow. Allahu Akbar, you see? And then, now look at the verse, how everything changes now. I love the love which is within me of horses, let's say horses, but it's good. That means he loves everything. Whatever is. Sulaiman alayhi salam, the one that you say is the last to go to heaven, he loved, amongst the prophets, he loves the love of good, the love of horses, out of the remembrance of his Lord. So it's all coming from Allah. This love which is within him, and this loving of this love which is within, it's all from Allah's remembrance. And then such a person misses salat. Such a person then just kills the horses, for example. Yes, I think I'm taking this as a sign that I'll go to the Zikr Musibah. I'll complete this and the other story, inshallah, which follows this story, inshallah, in the next session, tomorrow, which is the final session. Well, of my speeches anyway. Okay, tonight is the 9th eve of Muharram, which is attributed to Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam. Now, this is something very tricky to understand and unlock what's happening here. And however much I try to investigate the issue, some people have made certain claims, but it's very difficult to accept. The point was that with Hazrat Abbas, Imam Hussein alayhi salam never gave permission from the beginning of the massacre. Many times Abbas alayhi salam wanted to go. The permission was never given. He would say, but you're the standard bearer. Or some water for the children first. As to why the Imam wouldn't give permission, yet some things have been said. I'm not sure if one should mention the different theories which have been said. Although as I say, it's not substantiated before me. But some say he got the consent from Ali alayhi salam. From birth. He was born for this purpose. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Abbas was born, alayhi salam, he would caress his hands, his arms. Yes, he knew this was for a purpose. And during the life of Abbas, alayhi salam, it was always mentioned that you have to protect Hussein. You have to, and you're going to be martyred, and so on and so forth. And so this theory says that Imam would never say it explicitly because it was already given by Amirul Mu'mineen. How much one can base that on reality, I don't know, because Hazrat Abbas was the eldest son amongst the sons of al-Baneen. He had 3 other brothers, they were all martyred in Karbala. What are you going to say there? There Imam Hussein gave the consent to those to go. But it was never given with Abbas. It was always indirect, something else was said. And Hazrat Abbas was the 4th son of Amirul Mu'mineen. But with al-Baneen, he was the eldest. Here, from the 7th night, when they blocked access to the river, during the night, people from Hussein's camp, alayhi salam, would go to the river, get water, and come back. It wasn't as if they had no water for 3 nights or 3 days. At night they would go, but at the beginning there were only few soldiers acting as a barrier for them to go. So at night they would send people over, and there were minor skirmishes and little sword-to-sword one-on-ones. But it was night time though. But during the 3 nights, when Umar ibn Sa'd saw this, he would add on to the soldiers more and more. And it would make it more difficult, but it was still night. On the day of Ashura, it was daytime when Abbas was sent. Things would change now. At night, the strategies is different. Abbas alayhi salam saw the men of the Ahlul Bayt, companions of the Ahlul Bayt, they've all been killed. Even his own family members who had been present in Karbala had been martyred. On the other side, he would hear the cries for water and the need for help from the women and children in the tents. He couldn't tolerate this further. Once again, he had gone to seek permission from Imam Hussein to enter the arena. Since Abbas's name and appearance was fearful for the enemy, the women were still relatively calm in Abbas's presence. After all, he was the standard bearer. Imam Hussein would say, whilst crying, Ya Akhi, anta sahibul liwa'i. Abbas, on one of these occasions, said, Qad dhaqa sadri, my heart is hurting. وَسَمِعْتُ مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ, I'm satiated with life. وَأُرِيدُ أَنْ أَطْلُبَ ثَارِي مِنْ هَؤُلَاءِ الْمُنَافِقِينَ, and I want to take retaliation against these hypocrites for the blood that they've spilled. Then Imam Hussein said, if this is the case, but فَاطْلُبْ لَهَؤُلَاءِ الْأَطْفَالِ قَلِيلًا مِنَ الْمَاءِ, you seek some more water as you've done in the last 3 nights for these children, and collect some water for them. Abbas alayhi salam went to the Kufan army, trying to speak some sense into them, counseling them, advising them, but it was of no avail. He then turned to Umar ibn Sa'd and said, Hussein is the son of the Holy Prophet's daughter. You've killed all his companions and family members. His female family members and children remain. فَاسْقُوهُمْ مِنَ الْمَاءِ, satiate them with water. قَدْ أَحْرَقَ الظَّمَأُ قُلُوبَهُمْ, verily their hearts are burning with thirst. Why have you shut all access to the water, especially when they're telling you that if you allow them to leave Iraq and Medina, they'll go wherever you want? Some soldiers started crying, but Shem reversed the atmosphere without delay by shouting out loud, Yabna Abi Turab, لو كان وجه الأرض كله ماء وهو تحت أيدينا لما سقيناكم منه قطرة إلا أن تدخلوا في بيعة يزيد. That if the surface area of the earth was all full of water and it was all under our control, we wouldn't have satiated you or quenched a single drop of water for you unless you enter paying allegiance to Yazid. Abbas alayhi salam returned to give Imam Hussein the latest. Meanwhile, the cries were increasing, and Hazrat Abbas couldn't stand for any more. Zeal and anger drove him to mount his horse with a water container and go and collect some water. He approached the Euphrates. All of a sudden, because it was daytime, the order was given for all the arrowsmen to attend, and some reports say 4,000 arrowsmen suddenly surrounded Abbas immediately and started firing their arrows at him now and again. He, though, without any fear, fought whoever challenged him, and the flag of Islam was standing high. He filled the container, and before returning, his hands went into the water. Since the previous night, he himself had drank no water, and anything he had collected he would give to the children the previous night. And his hands entered the water, and suddenly he was with his hands in the water thinking of what to do. Maybe he wanted to revitalize himself. But تذكر أتش الحسين وأهل بيته فرمى الماء. He remembered the thirst of Imam Hussein and the Ahl Bayt and discarded the water. He mounted his horse ready to leave for the camp where the children and women were all awaiting and eager to see him with the water. So after filling his water container, he started his journey back, and the attacks towards him were increasing. He combated many of them and defeated them accordingly, but 2 soldiers out of nowhere from behind cowardly attacked him unexpectedly, and the 2's maneuver led to the amputation of Abbas's right arm. And then Abbas continued, however, calling out with honor, Wallahi in qata'tum yamini inni uhami abadan an dini. That even if you cut my right arm, I'm going to defend eternally an dini. Wa an imam as-sadiq al-yaqini najl al-nabiy al-tahir al-amini. And I'll eternally support my trustworthy imam, who is the imam of certitude, and the imam who is the offspring of the Prophet, who was pure and trustworthy. He wasn't saddened in the least. Water must be conveyed. It was now in his left arm. And similar maneuvers of the enemy continued until the left arm was also amputated. And before it becoming thoroughly amputated, Abbas managed to place the container top into his mouth to hold onto it with the gripping of his teeth. The attacking arrowsmen, seeing Abbas helpless, surrounded him and started pouring arrows at him. One hit the container, another hit the chest. Things were looking grim. Hope in the water lessened for the children and women of Bani Hashim. All of a sudden, someone approached him and struck his head with an iron bar, making him fall helplessly onto the ground from the horse. It was then that he called out to his brother, Alayka minni as-salam ya Aba Abdullah. Hussein alayhi salam came to Abbas, and what a sight he had to see. All his body covered with wooden arrows, no arms, face drowned and soaked in blood, no eyes to see. The head was smashed. This was the end of Abbas. Hussein knew it and exclaimed, Al-ana inkasara dhahri wa qallat hilati. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-dhalim.